The killing of Shireen Abu Akleh has had repercussions well beyond the Middle East. Take Germany, a country still atoning for the World War II Holocaust, where politicians of all stripes say they have a special responsibility to safeguard German Jews and to support Israel. A vigil for Abu Akleh, set for Berlin, was banned from taking place, as were other pro-Palestine gatherings. For Palestinians in Germany, that is par for the course. Many say they bear the brunt of the country's historical guilt, that legitimate protests against the Israeli occupation get dismissed as anti-Semitic. And if you're a Palestinian or Arab journalist in Germany, prepare to be treated with suspicion, to defend your personal views, even your upbringing. German tabloids are of no help. They have hyped up what they call imported anti-Semitism from the Middle East. And some damaging stories in the media have effectively ended the careers of Palestinian and Arab journalists. The Listening Post's Tarek Nafa now from Berlin on the discourse around anti-Semitism in Germany.
Being a Palestinian journalist in Germany is very scary. The atmosphere is extremely toxic. Your mere existence as a Palestinian is, in a way, being criminalized. It's a provocation for some. Either you stay silent or you decide to speak up. But when you speak up, you have to know that you're going to pay a price for that.
In Germany, a decades-long effort to atone for the Holocaust in World War II has often had the effect of suffocating debate on Palestine and Israel.
Deutschland an diesem Samstagnachmittag. Israel-Hass, Judenhass.
A prevailing narrative among Germany's media and political elites is that the country has confronted its past.
Antisemitismus nicht erst bei der Hassparole, bei der Demonstration anfängt, sondern eben schon bei der Erziehung. In den Satellitenfernsehen aus der Türkei, Al Jazeera.
There is a belief that anti-Semitism is no longer a homegrown problem, but has instead been imported from abroad by Arabs and Muslims.
In der Tat ist es so, dass in bestimmten Milieus der Antisemitismus quasi von Generation zu Generation durchgereicht wird.
There is something close to a purge going on in Germany, and it's important to know that it isn't just of Palestinians. There are McCarthyite tactics going on, which have also led to many people being quite afraid to speak up. I have spoken up. I believe my job is secure, and I'm Jewish. But I have had many Germans tell me, whispered almost, you can say this, we cannot.
You feel constantly observed. There is always people following you very closely, screenshotting what you post in order to then tweet them completely out of context, tagging your employers, and you feel you cannot breathe because the freedom that you need to be a journalist is being taken from you.
Last year, Palestinian-German journalist Nemi El-Hassan was about to take up a job with the public broadcaster WDR when an article was published about her in Bild, an avowedly pro-Israel, anti-immigrant tabloid. The newspaper was given an image, allegedly from a right-wing blogger, of El-Hassan in a hijab and a keffiyeh, attending a controversial march organized by the Iranian government in support of Palestinians. It was July 2014, during Israel's punishing war on the Gaza Strip. El-Hassan was 20 years old. 3 days after the Bild article, an apologetic El-Hassan met with Germany's largest news site, Der Spiegel, for an interview that read more like an interrogation. She was questioned on her family and her beliefs, and said she changed a lot since her youth. El-Hassan never got her new job. It was a follow-up article by Bild on her social media likes that sealed her fate.
People uncovered likes on social media for a Jewish Voice for Peace, a big Jewish American group that uses terms like apartheid. If a term like apartheid that is actually used by several human rights groups, is being labeled as anti-Semitism here in Germany, things are simply becoming absurd to a certain degree.
Nimi el-Hassan was kind of publicly executed and everyone stood by. This was about destroying Nimi el-Hassan as a symbol, and it sent a very clear message that there is no space in Germany for Palestinian legitimate narratives, and to employers, be aware of whom you work with.
Germany's most influential newspaper, Bild, and its parent company, Axel Springer, play an outsized role in setting the tone on this debate. We asked the paper for an interview. They declined. In a statement, they told us, critical reporting on anti-Semitism in any form should be the basic consensus of all free media. Of course, it is possible to criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic. However, we find that criticism of Israel is often not much more than poorly camouflaged anti-Semitism.
Bild Zeitung is the largest paper in the country. It's a right-leaning tabloid that has, since its inception, insisted that its representatives swear an sort of a loyalty oath to the State of Israel. But there is Muslim anti-Semitism. I mean, let's be honest, that exists. But the most virulent and the criminal cases of anti-Semitism are not primarily caused by Muslims. 90% are committed by white right-wing Germans. And that is not something that Springer or most of the German press is focusing on at all.
6 months ago, the Deutsche Zeitung, a centre-left paper, reported on cases of alleged anti-Semitism at international broadcaster Deutsche Welle. DW then launched what it called an independent investigation. Dozens of Arab journalists were questioned, including on their personal politics. 7 were eventually fired. A few had made comments that were anti-Semitic. The others say they were purged, that DW found them guilty by association.
It's completely out of debate that if a journalist posts anything anti-Semitic, racist, xenophobic, that he will have to lose his or her job, yeah? There is no discussion about that. But I know people who lost their job during this investigation for really no reason. No reason. It was very clear that they were in that interrogation for the mere reason of having Palestinian origins. They had to reply to questions on their views on Hamas, on the one or two state solution, on the BDS movement. Most Germans don't see how scandalous this is. To make an investigation on anti-Semitism within Deutsche Welle focusing exclusively on Arab employees is so racist by itself.
Few societies are more hyper-vigilant to the threat of anti-Semitism than Germany. The history of the Holocaust has shaped both Germany's identity and its moral purpose, but it has also resulted in uncritical support for Israel. In 2019, the German parliament passed a non-binding resolution, a declaration of intent, condemning the boycott, divestment and sanctions, or BDS movement, as anti-Semitic. That quickly created an atmosphere of paranoia and political inquisition. Which leaves the Palestinian community here in this Arab neighborhood of Berlin feeling vulnerable, afraid of speaking out about their own experiences of Israeli violence, occupation and dispossession, with the risk of being labeled an anti-Semite. Germany is home to one of the largest Palestinian diasporas in Europe. It may also be the most silent.
The problem is that if you reduce German identity to not being anti-Semitic, then you're very open to the sort of efforts that the Israeli government very deliberately puts out that any criticism of Israeli policy is anti-Semitic. And Germans are extremely vulnerable to that kind of message, and they've basically swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker.
There is a kind of desire in Germany to exonerate oneself of even the kind of suspicion of anti-Semitism by kind of externalizing that sense of anticipatory guilt on people, on foreigners, on people who come in from the outside, quote unquote. Germans very much like to praise what we frame as Vergangenheitsbewältigung, you know, the kind of like dealing with the past, but we have to be very wary of anti-Semitism where actually it occurs, but not to sort of simply externalize it and think that this helps anybody, be it Jews or anyone else.
I'm half German, half Palestinian. I was born and raised in Germany. I'm very, very aware of Germany's dark history. For me, it's surreal to see how the term anti-Semitism is being misused to silence Palestinian legitimate narratives, to silence Jewish individuals and Jewish organizations if their narrative does not fit the German narrative. In Germany, we have Nazis in the police. We have right-wing terrorist attacks by Nazis. Anti-Semitism is real, and shifting the whole debate on anti-Semitism towards silencing people who speak up for Palestinian human rights is really, really dangerous because it downplays the real threat of anti-Semitism and racism.